we're extraordinarily lucky to be joined by two truly inspiring leaders within our industry. When we set about bringing Urbanity together this year, we asked ourselves what we wanted to focus on. And after a series of meetings, as I mentioned yesterday, it was all about legacy, urban legacy. And as people that work within the built environment, we were very mindful that our legacy is far more lasting and permanent than most others in other industries. So as we considered this concept, we thought about what it means to create and leave a lasting legacy. And these two gentlemen here can claim to have left a positively indelible mark on skylines around Australia and indeed the world. It was an easy choice for us to approach both Iwan and Soheil, as they share much more in common than just the pursuit of quality design and development. Upon putting my research together, I noticed that their journeys parallel in more ways than we originally thought as well. So it is my great pleasure to be hosting this session this morning. Gentlemen, Iwan, Soheil, please join us on stage. Would you please make them welcome? Now, I will introduce them both personally, but I'd like to do it with you up here. Iwan, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Soheil, welcome again.
Good to see. Where do I sit? Yeah.
Now, I don't really like reading bios, but I will, because I think it's important just to frame exactly what we're talking about today. So Iwan is the co-founder and chief executive officer of Sunland Group, which is now one of the largest privately owned development companies in Australia. He graduated from the University of New South Wales with a Bachelor of Architecture and a Master's in Construction Management, before applying his craft as an architect. Since 1994, Sunland Group has evolved from a boutique operation, as you describe it, to an enterprise now with a multi-billion-dollar development pipeline around the world. Iwan has been recognised with a string of awards, including Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year and the Urban Task Force Property Person of the Year. Soheil Abedian is the executive chairman and founder of listed development company Sunland, which he founded in 1983 with a single luxury home on the Gold Coast. Sunland Group has been an undisputed leader in the pursuit of a new standard of residential living in Australia. Over 35 years, Sunland Group has delivered some of Australia's most renowned landmarks, including the world's first fashion-branded hotel, Palazzo Versace, and the world's tallest residential tower, Q1. Beyond a host of other awards, Soheil was recently awarded the Philanthropist of the Year award for his contribution to education through the Abedian Foundation, which funded the Abedian School of Architecture at Bond University. Would you please join me in welcoming these gentlemen again? Welcome. Now, we were very, very tempted to put photos up and use them as prompters, but at the last minute we decided, no, let's actually talk, discuss, and share your journeys. Let's start at the very, very start. You were both born overseas and located to Australia as young men. Iwan, you grew up in Indonesia. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood?
Well, I was born in Indonesia. I grew up in the jungle of Kalimantan. And it was quite an exciting beginning because the house was actually on top of the river. Sometimes the house is in the river, in the water, when the flood rises up and you kind of, as a little kid, you kind of fun, right? Because you go, wow, this is great, let's go canoeing. And crocodile is part of it, and you swim in the river, and if you survive, you are making it, really. Right? And it was just this beautiful jungle on the back, and that was before the deforestation of the whole Kalimantan through the planting that they have there. But it was a great journey in the beginning. And then I moved from Kalimantan to Surabaya, and then I failed in one of my year in year 12 or year 11. Then my dad sent me to Australia and studied there, and that's how it started. So I actually lived more than half of my life in Sydney or in Australia. So I'm an Aussie now.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I think I'm Aussie.
That's it. And Soheil, similarly, you were born in Iran?
I was born in Iran.
And then moved to Austria, we understand.
Yes, I'm one of the 5 children. And I was born in a family that is from the Baha'i faith. And it is prosecuted the longest genocide in human history, over 175 years, with the Iranian government. And I moved to Austria because my father believed that education is the foundation of every human being to contribute for the betterment of humanity. And I went after the Second World War, obviously, to Austria, which Hitler was born there, you can imagine now. From one hand, being in minority in your own country, going to another country that you have chosen to be educated as a foreigner after the Second World War. And when I finished my master's degree in architecture, we decided to move to Australia. And that was really a new frontier for us in every aspect. And as you mentioned, I started with one house, and the reason of that it was that although I had my master's degree in architecture with honors, because it wasn't from the Commonwealth countries, the Royal Institute of Architects did not accept my qualification. Thanks God for that. And I decided to design for myself and build my first homes, and one thing led to the other one. And today, when I look back, the best thing that it could ever happen to me, it was that they didn't accept my qualification. Something that I was entitled to, they didn't give me, but throughout my work, I received 2 professorships and 2 doctorates. So that's how...
Not bad.
Not bad.
Now, both obviously studied architecture. What attracted you both to architecture?
He's a legend himself, right? And, I own 3 buildings in his building in Q1. I don't know, I love drawing. The fact that I was struggling in my early childhood study, doing mathematics, chemistry, and the likes. It wasn't, I was not because I was stupid, I was just mixing with the wrong crowd. And later on, after my failure, I actually did quite well in all of that. But I love drawing, I love architecture, and I just love building, and everywhere I go, and I always joke, on our first honeymoon, traveling with my wife, and 2.5 months around the world, I remember the old Kodak film, like 300 photos. I probably take about 70% all buildings and 30% ourselves, right? So oftentimes I said to my wife, can you move around a bit more? You're blocking the building there. So it was just the passion of building. And because my son, I sent him to study in USA and USC, and then we went to Stanford to see the Stanford education and see how the culture of entrepreneurship was created there. I said to my son, let's take a lot of photo here. He said, Dad, you never take any photo in USC. Yeah, I said, the buildings in USC is not that great, is it? So I don't know, it was just passion, and it's something that I love. And as I walk into building and places, I remember a time when I was taking the whole family to the Northern Europe, and we landed into this new place in, I think, Stockholm, and I just left completely. I forgot the whole family. And my wife got upset, who's taking the luggage? Right? But I was just completely and I was attracted to the whole building, and I take photos. And my youngest daughter, I think at that time she was 10, she said, Daddy, if you're seeing good buildings, you're like a child in the lowly place. You forget about the whole thing, and that's what drives
Don't put this
me.
man in the desert.
Yeah.
Soheil, what attracted you to architecture?
Look, I always believe that any urban setting, any city, is a museum of the built form. And every single individual would like to have an artwork in any museum if they have a chance to do that. I tried my best to have some pieces in the world urbanistic scape, and I don't know if I made it or if I didn't make it, but nevertheless, I tried my best in that path. I believe 3 elements. It is fundamental to human culture. It is the architecture, it is the poetry and the books and the paintings that we have. And when you go back to thousands of years, the only thing that is manifest about the culture is these 3 elements that the people have left behind. And thanks God, we have chosen a pathway that maybe the future generation will judge about us.
Would you encourage your children to go into architecture today? Do you think it's still the same?
Actually, my son is here, Tom, that he studied first in London, and then he moved to New York, Pratt, and he finished his architecture and the master in industrial design, and he is now become a developer himself and competing with me.
There you go.
I don't know where he
Who
is.
wins?
I would just allow my children to be them.
Yeah.
Because I think it's like even us and three in the family, I kind of had a business instinct from my dad and a bit more artistic skill of my mom. But none of the other two children within that family have that artistic skill of my mom. So I think I just encourage them to be them for this generation. But architecture is wonderful. Architecture can form communities and change people.
There's a lot of people here that at the early phase of their careers and, either starting or thinking about starting or having reasonably in the last, say, decade started. What kind of advice have you got for people that are sort of looking to get into the broader property industry and, I guess people that are considering entering property development, because it's not without its challenges, and it's an industry that is changing quite radically. What advice have you got for people getting started? What was influential in your lives as well?
Guys, I genuinely believe when you look at it, the fabric of the society in Australia and our economy, that the only thing is one of the few things, if I may say, that Australia is still proud of is the construction industry that we have left. We immigrated in 1981 to Australia, and I remember vividly that we had one of the biggest textile industry. We had one of the biggest steel manufacturing industry. We had a car manufacturing industry. Gradually, we have lost everything. But Australia is proud, actually, to have being at the frontier of the construction industry. And when you go all around the world, you will see that Australian individuals, that they are in the top of the organization globally, that they are contributing in the construction industry. But if you are coming to that industry to make money, I can assure you with certainty up to 90% that you will fail. But if you are coming to that industry to contribute for the betterment of the urban setting and the landscape of the city that you are, I can assure you 100% this time that you will succeed. The reality of our industry should be the legacy that we leave behind and not really dividing our city based on who has money and who doesn't have. And that is the crisis that we see in urbanism all around the world, that even the gateway city, Paris, London, New York, Milan, Sydney, Melbourne, that has been divided in those that they have versus those that they don't have. And I think it is our duty in the construction industry to create something that the city is beneficial for everyone, not just for the few.
I think that's a very valid point, and you weren't here yesterday, but it was raised in our internet. We had a keynote join us from Singapore who shared very similar kind of data-led insights into why that is an issue, particularly in the urban context. It's a serious problem. Iwan, what was really influential on you when you were growing up and setting up your business and in the early years?
It's interesting. I always want to be. I wanted to actually. I had this crazy dream of actually giving away $1 million. So it was. Don't ask me why, but I just thought about. It would be wonderful if I could actually contribute back in monetary term to $1 million. But the thing about it, I thought it's almost impossible because 3 or 4 years before I was, as a student, you work any job that you can, and I was working as a kitchen hand 10 hours a day, $3 an hour, washing dishes and making satay. But I had this kind of crazy thing in my head that said, it would be wonderful if one day I could actually give that $1 million away. Now, you can't give what you do not have, right? You can't give $1 million if you only have $1 million because you've got nothing left there. So it sets that goal, and it drives me in terms of wanting to be more like running my own business, because I was not too bad as an architect. I graduated from New South Wales Uni, and I was given the award as the best designer, and I worked hard for it. In the early year, I almost gave it up, but I made a decision at the end of third year, if I don't get a distinction, I'll quit there. So that sets me a goal that says, look, I can't be a director of an architecture company and be giving away this goal here. So that's what compels me. Of course, Dad, being an entrepreneur, also kind of influenced me to some extent, but I never really had a big dream in a way that until at such a time that I kind of thought, it would be wonderful if I can give $1 million away. And I thought, wow, okay, how do I make $5 million then? So I mean, you earn $30 an hour a day, and now you're setting this big goal of $1 million. And that kind of sets that drive into the business, and that's how it started, really. And I could see that I could stay as an architect, and I think I wanted to be like IMPei, the Chinese architect that migrated to New York or America and become very famous and designed some of the most wonderful museums in there. I wanted to be more like John Podman, who is an architect who also designed that beautiful hotel. So I kind of said that I have the skill of architecture, but also entrepreneurship, and I want to combine it so that I can design my own building one day. And I thought architecture. I was also getting into construction business, and I built houses, and I built $1 million house, $2 million houses, but I kind of shut it down towards later on. But it gives me the foundation, but then I get into the development, and I thought this is something like high risk, but high return, and I guess that's what I want it to be. And I thought, I don't really want to run a 100-people architecture company and making X dollars. I will never achieve my dream. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just head a small company, and you can run big projects. Of course, 20 odd years later, we now have 200 people running for the operation. It was like bigger than I thought, but it was the right decision for me that drives me, and I'm enjoying it really.
Fantastic. And were there moments of luck? We spoke about your first deal, for example, in Sydney and Soheil. I'm interested to understand from your perspective as well. Was there a deal? Was there something that gave you the opportunity, a very lucky chance that you had to get going?
Interesting. Well, my first job, my first development job that I've never done any development. I graduated from architecture in 1991. 92, I did my master's degree, and then I started up the architecture business. 93, 94. The development kicked in 96. First job. The first job was $25 million job, and by that time, I only raised up $300,000 equity from my friend, my uncle, my auntie, my dad. Right? It's important to have a lot of families. And that's all I have. And I wanted to do $1 million job, but of course, after 1 year of searching, almost like 20 sites every week, every month, couldn't find anything. You can't compete with a small developers. And then I stumbled upon a site, and somebody says, "Do you want to buy this land?" I said, "How much?" $5 million. That's only the land, right? The building is another 10. Okay, what about interest? Consultants, another 22 million. So you need about 5 million equity. And I just called a few friends, and I said, hey guys, do you want to look at this land? And it happened to be it was a stroke of luck, but there was a lot of learning from there. I called my friend who's running a real estate agency. I called another friend of mine that is a longtime friend from my uni friend. He's also a developer. They both are 10 years ahead of me in terms of knowledge. And I said, "Do you want to look at it?" And they said, "Yeah, let's do it." And I called my dad, and I said, "Dad, should we do it? Can you lend me some money?" And Dad said, "Like, okay, I'll give you $600,000. And I was the smallest shareholders in that time, and I'm now 50% of the business. But it was really interesting that one deal, first job, everything that goes wrong into that job, and we made money out of that job.
So Hal, what about you? Was there a stroke there? Was there a deal that put it all together?
Oh yeah, it was very interesting. One morning in early 1980s, I was very early on the side of one house that I was building, and I was cleaning the driveway to make it ready for the tiler to come and put the tile. And a yellow Rolls Royce arrived with Max Christmas and Michael Gore, the developer of Century Cove. I never knew Michael. He came out, I don't know if you guys even know of him, and every word that he started talking to me was at the front of it, the F word. That you copied the effing design from effing California, and I was really, really surprised, and I asked Max, why is he talking like that? He said, don't worry about it, that's his style. Anyway, after that I said, no, I'm an architect, I design my own houses. He said, do you know where is Century Cove? I said, no. He said, what effing builder are you that you don't know where Century Cove is? Anyway, he invited me to go and visit him, which I did. And he said, I want you to come and build all the waterfront villas and the patio home in Century Cove. And I said, okay. And he said, I want to put you exclusive as my builder. How much do you want? And I said, Michael, I don't think that you can afford me because I'm building 10 houses a year and I make an average $100,000. If I have to come and work for you, at least that is what I want from you. I never forget that day he grabbed me, and he was a big boy, and threw me out of his office, and every single word that you know in the vocabulary that starts with F or other one, he mentioned to me, and threw me out. Anyway, and I left. 1 week later, he called me, he said, have you come to your senses? And I said, I never lost it. He said, come and see me. And we started to discuss again, and he said, how much do you want? And I mentioned again the same figure. And he said, do you understand that you are asking 5 times more than the Prime Minister of Australia? I said, I'm 10 times better than him. And he started to grab me again, and I said, don't touch me. He called the security, and they threw me out this time. Third time, I received a phone call from his chief financial officer and said, Soheil, I said, under no circumstances I would even come to Century Cove. He said, no, I want to come to your place and have a coffee with you. And he had a contract with him, and I started in 1985 with $1 million wages to build the Century Cove. And I did it with almost saving them $2.5 million from the original budget that they had. That was my first break. The second one, when I finished and came out, I was in my Christmas office and I heard that Gordon Pacific amalgamated the site in Main Beach, which he sold it to the Japanese for $6 million. And I turned around and to one of the salespeople and I said, is it any other site there? They said, yes. I said, can you amalgamate it for me? They said, you have no idea about high-rise. I said, no, don't worry about it, just amalgamate it. They amalgamated exactly the next door for $2.5 million. Went to beneficial finance, Chris Freeman, and I said, this site is sold for $6 million. How much is the value of that one? He said, $6 million. I said, I'm happy to join venture it with you at $6 million. And we did the deal. And so I spent 50-50. They put $3 million. I put the land. It means I didn't put anything in. And that was my breakthrough high-rise.
Fantastic.
So 2 people really made a massive impact in my early career.
Yeah, and I think someone once said to me, you know, half of all luck is just showing up.
Yeah.
And I think that's true to those 2 stories, which is taking the opportunity as it presents itself and just going for it sensibly, but going for it as well. I mean, fast forward now to where we are, and Iwan, I know you work very closely with Japanese architects on some of your current projects. Soheil, you've worked with Zaha Hadid and many other really recognisable names within this industry. I mean, how are you putting together these beautiful, iconic projects that you're developing from a design perspective? And particularly as architects as well, it must be hard to sort of disassociate yourself, but then there's so much of you personally within the project. So how about putting the creations together? How do you go about it, Soheil?
Look, the reality is no matter how good you are or how average you are in any industry, if you do not believe that a new blood should come through, the new water should come through, you will stay where you are. You have always to work with outside talent that you can progress in the field that you are working. We have associated with a number of international architects throughout, but we always do the master planning ourselves. We always do the interior planning ourselves because I genuinely believe with total humility, the planning that we do for the unit is based on what the people need, and not necessarily every architect understand the requirement of what the lifestyle of Australia is. So when they are in America, be it in Europe or anywhere else, we believe that we understand that. But they have maybe a system to decorate the external building that maybe we don't. And Zaha, for example, is one of them. And when we went to them, our original discussion was about it, that how they should do based on our master planning. And we did all the interior ourselves, and they did all the external themselves. It's not meant to be. The government, although they made all the promises, they stopped the project for Mariners Cove and ABC side in Brisbane. And we are still in contact with them, and we have to see if the government once come to their senses that if a developer is prepared to give a museum to the city, and they would say, no, I don't want it, for simple one reason, which is totally logically sheer stupidity to say no, because of few voices that they are against that. And it is very similar, I always say, that somebody has a painting of Rembrandt and goes to the British Museum and they say, you know what, we don't have any wall to hang it. We could have on the Gold Coast a landmark development that it was designed by Zaha, and the last museum that it was designed by her, and the state government stopped it.
Well, I think, that's one that hopefully we see a sensible outcome in the future on, fingers crossed. Iwan, you're in the process of putting together arguably one of your most special developments at the moment with Mastery. How are you putting your creations together with the team?
If I can go back a bit more and just respond to what I think,
Sure.
adding what Soheil has to say. Like when people are looking at a lot of our buildings today that I just, hang on, there's just a lot of money being pumped in there. Like, Green Square building called Infinity. The budget was 170 million. We finished about 220 million. Now, the reality of business, I actually approach it like when people are saying, wow, you're doing that. The reality is that I'm looking at it more pragmatic way, where in the early days that I could never possibly do what we do today, simply because we have no brand power, we have no distribution channels in a way that, I used to remember that we were building just on average, a better building than a competitor at 20% below the market price, or their price. We could not even sell it. And they were just selling it just like that, simply because we have no brand, we do not have loyalty followers that follow us from job to job. The last 3 to 4 years, we were enjoying what we see, the fruit of 20 years of putting better building. I remember 2013 or 2012, the biggest launch we had was $30 million launch. We hit it 30 million, you sold 30 units. And then the year after, we're starting to build up a bit more, but don't forget that we've been in business for a long time, in 1996 to 2013. So we're starting to build a brand, and we hit $100 million sales in 1 week. The year after, we launched another job. We built a better building, and we sold $170 million in 1 day. But that was like 20% above the premium of what other people are putting in there. And then when it comes to Green Square, one building that just moved people, one piece of paper, and we had 1,000 people lining up on the door on the launch, and we sold $385 million in just 5 hours. Like $100 million rate per hour, bang, bang, it hits it like it's chaotic on that day. It was like a fruit market, people just buying, right? And so, but what you see is a 30 million that grows to 60 million, that grows to 100, 170 million. But in the past, it took me 2 years to sell $30 million job because we have no brand. So what I think, what I'm trying to add a bit more there is that the reality of business that we almost need to move from Hyundai to Toyota, being Toyota to Lexus, but it takes time to grow there. Now, even though that I wanted to be producing the best of the best in the early days, that I could never achieve that. But what we did as a company is slowly putting our brand, putting And we were not even in the media until 8 years into our business. I was conscious about not wanting to be in the media until we know what we want to do, and we know our color, we know our unique identity. After 8 years in the business, we hit $1 billion pipeline, and we kind of achieved that from $25 million job, $5 million capital injection, $1 billion. So now, and that's when I was in the media. Today, it was amazing, and how you bring the whole creative in, or the best of the best in the world. That was just, as an architect, I was just getting a bit left behind now, and I'm like, there's no way that I can design the building as good as some of these brightest people, working with people like Kengo Kuma, the design mastery. I mean, I just came back from there doing the shooting of the filming there. He talks about architecture as if it's spirit. It's just like, wow. I mean, we were in the room capturing his talk about how materials speak to people. We were having goosebumps. It was, wow. He walked in the room and he flew all the way from Japan, and I remember the design competition, and I specifically want him to design it, and I traveled to Japan to meet him a few times, and I saw his building in the Great Wall of China and the bamboo house, and I said, I got to have this guy here to design our building. He walked into the room. Virtually, the whole room was silent. He was talking, and we knew that just the way he designed it, it's just amazing. And that's something that's what people see beyond the beautiful building. There's a meaning to building that compels people. So what most Crown Group, what enables us to achieve the 100 million, 170 million, is beyond, well, I like it. It's, well, I like it or dislike it. There's a sense of purpose. There's a core value. There is a theme behind it. And that's what Koichi Takada and Kengo Kuma is really good, among many architects that we use. It wasn't because they want to design a beautiful building. Kengo was in mastery, was designing a city, a forest on the hill. So his building is a vertical stacking forest. It was just beautiful to see how they put all these years of experience. And we call it mastery because it's a collaboration of masters. We have 5 buildings, and we want this to be a collaboration of masters architect. And we asked Kengo about, are you a master yet? He said, no. We said, how do you become a master? He said, well, the journey is lonely because you don't know when you will become a master, but you got to be humble. Just having that inspirational time with them is amazing.
Now, you've both built incredible brands that now attract loyal following, that have a currency, have a value in and of themselves. Soheil, I mean, what is your approach to the marketing of your development? It's obviously, I guess not to diminish it in any way, it would appear to be simpler now than it was in the early years by virtue of the fact that you've got the brand and you've built it over time. But how do you approach the way that you convince the marketplace to take up your developments?
Look, it has its forte as well. It could be negative for you because you will be always judged by the last development that you do. And you cannot always raise the bar higher and higher and higher, because as higher as you go, if you fall down, you will be hurt more. The reality is we are in business now 38 years, and I had from the my very first interview with Financial Review, when they asked me the question, what is this psychology of the building that you are designing, no matter if it was at that time a townhouse for $95,000, I wish I kept all of them now, or houses that it was around $1 million. I said I always design something that I could personally live in it. I did not ever compromise that I distinguish between those that they have the money versus those that they don't have the money. Of course, you have different categories of product, but the reality is you have to always make sure that your brand is a testimony of your ability and the truth to the product that you are building. Today, we are in a stage now that the last project, for example, Hedges Avenue, that we are building the 45-story tower, 60% of it sold in the first week just to our database. So, as you mentioned correctly, we have established our name on a niche market, which is really the luxury development. and owner-occupier development versus investor market. And in our view, being through 3 different recessions in Australia, we find that owner-occupier market, it may go up and down, but it is not going to crash. As the investor market, we have seen in a number of the developers of the global financial crisis. For example, on the Gold Coast, we had 37 development companies, which only 2 of them left, and 35 they went bankrupt. Because it was the majority of them, they were concentrating on something that is easy to sell it to the investor. And when the market stopped, that is the first area that everybody ran away. As the owner-occupier, they're always the people, they are trying to find opportunity when the market is turning around. So therefore, to all of you, the advice is, if you want to go to the property industry, try to understand how small the owner-occupier market is and stay with that one.
Do you share that view?
I think both markets are needed right now, especially where we are like developing, because we as a developer, Crown Group is an urban resort developers. Our focus is really on urban development. So I think you have 3 markets: the local market, the downsizer, and the younger generations, and then you get the student market, and you get the global investors there. I think both markets are cyclical sometimes, but both are important at the scale that we are operating there. Coming back to that, Adam, I mean, my approach to marketing, or probably, I look at every movement is like at the center of that is always you, right? You are the thermometer setting the temperature, and then the rest, you making an impact. And it's like if you throw a stone in the water and then it creates a ripple there. My approach is simple, that I will just build in the beginning, that we build a building that is known by a suburb, and slowly growing that influence over time into 2 or 3 suburbs as you build bigger and bigger and creating a better projects that's uniquely better. The impact is actually going a bit larger there. As a business now, we're saying, look, how can we become the Louis Vuitton and Bulgari of the property industry? So therefore, we work on this very methodical way to say, look, at the center of it, all is marketing, digital, social media, and all of them is really good, right? But if the product itself is not good, it can't create an impact. Now, we all know, I mean, some Instagram that we post get a lot of attention, some Instagram that we post does not get a lot of attention. It's simply because if the product is not good, now, I'm not trying to be creating a different product. I'm trying to create a good product. Because my approach is not, how do we create a uniquely better, how do we create a different product? I said, no, you don't have to be different to be good. Because if you're good, you're different. So, in other words, that we are an urban resort developer. We approach the development industry into 3 things. That our building has got to be architecturally iconic building. The second thing is our foyer has got to be this 5-star resort foyer. Third thing, it has to be, the landscape has got to be just instant urban resort there. And that's what we approach it, and we just get better and better at it. And then in terms of system, because I always say to our people that movement without system and process becomes a monument, right? Because when people get on fire and become excited, they say, yeah, let's do it, and that becomes a movement. But when there is no system and process that is methodical, oftentimes that the KPI is not met clearly and there's no target, we follow a very simple 3 circle of influence of Crown Group, the 3 C that we kind of invented: the core, the crowd, and the community. The core is people who believe in us, people who support from us. Core are people who knows us, our agents, our friends. They are 90% of our business. So we work really hard to be close to our core. And the crowds are people who come to our display unit for the first time. They come and they haven't made a decision. And we just keep bringing people through again and again. And you see our unveiling of our project, for instance. Like the first time we did it in 2015, it was like 2,000 people turning up. The whole industry turned up. And then every year we just do 2,000 people, right? And that was a crowd, because persistence breaks resistance. In other words, that people, first they come and say, look, I don't like you. Second, they say, you're more expensive than other people. Well, after a while, they said, yeah, your product is better. So, and then after a while, I mean, that persistence breaks resistance. And people said, like, I want to buy only you. Not dissimilar to how Mercedes-Benz and all this branded stuff where the core are people who really only want to buy a certain brand. The crowds are people who just come and see the brand, expose themselves to the brand. And community is simply the people that do not know us. So we're quite systematic in telling the people who do not know us to know us. So our goal is like, okay, how can 1 billion people to know Crown Group? To know what we do, what the essence of what makes us us, really. So we are systematic about our Facebook, our Instagram, and about our advertisement. But I love more about the media release, because I think, I said to our team, do not buy the story, but be the story. Just get it covered, get publicity, and oftentimes you become an expert in your industry. And from time to time, and if I said to people, 500 million, it was like, wow, that's a lot of people to reach. But all you need to do is to get CCTV from China. That's a government-backed television network. That's 500 million people to know you. You just reach another India market that is growing. And so that's 500 million quite easily. Indonesia, 250 million people. So what we do is simply just creating impact, looking at ways to make our product uniquely better and better at all the time. Just being good at what we're really good at. Almost like an artist where they paint a certain type of style of painting, they just get better at doing that, and they just learn from that, really.
That's fascinating. And what about now? I mean, you guys are both at stages of your career where it's success undisputedly. What motivates and inspires you to keep going, to keep doing more, to continue to perfect your craft?
Look, in my case, I think I'm over the end of my career. I'm celebrating next March my 70th birthday. I'm actually over time now. And what I'm doing, I have for the last 6 years that we established, 7 years actually, that we established Abedian Foundation. I am not taking one single cent from the work that I do, and my entire money that I'm making every single year goes to the foundation and distributed in a number of the charitable organizations, majority of them for the education with many of the schools and Bond University and Griffith University. We have now over 201 scholarship program that we have given to the student to have a future. And I believe my reason to really continue to work is not just contributing to the construction industry, to be a medium for educating children that they don't maybe have the means to showcase their ability when they have the opportunity to be educated. And education always has been really the foundation of our family, that my father always wanted us to come out of the Iran and have a university education outside the country. And I hope that I will continue with his legacy. And that is what is my motivation at this time of my life. And my wife, Anne, is here that is really running the foundation. And I hope that for the few years that I have left, that I could contribute more towards the education of the kids, that unfortunately through the disparity that we have created in all the Western countries, that 1% of the population owns now more than 90% of the wealth of the world. And those that they have, no matter how we look at it, they don't have the opportunity to reach to their ultimate potential, to in a small way, very, very small way, that we can really close that gap.
Iwan, what drives you now to go bigger, to go do more, to spend more time and energy on these sorts of things? Surely you can put your feet up and chill out and enjoy your time elsewhere. What's your purpose?
People like us will go dead if we don't do that, right? I think we're just not wired that way. As a company, we're aiming to go public by 2021, so we're putting all the energy and
Don't do that, Iwan.
I know. I think I need to sit down with you, Soheil. But
you will regret every minute of it after we go.
Sounds like all the advisors that I've spoken to, they're saying no to that.
Of course, they will tell you, please go, because
No,
they
they-
want to underwrite it and get the 3% commission. Don't do
Commission.
that.
Thanks, free advice here.
The Crown Group business
I
plan
will
has
send you
changed.
the bill later on, but that's okay.
So that was one of the things. And then as a profession, I mean, I always want to design a city one day. And there's an opportunity that I'm working on in Indonesia to actually develop a 500 hectares waterfront development that I want to challenge the Indonesian government, the presidents and the ministers to talk about. Let's create it as a city of the future for Indonesia, because after all, Indonesia has some of the youngest population-based country in the world. I mean, very, very young people, and it's got a big population. That's something that I want to work with. I'm not sure if I'm going to get it there or not, but we've joint venture with the Indonesian government for the first 3,000 units waterfront, and this is just the next edition of the thing. And I want to challenge them about, look, if you look at Stanford, it wasn't really about building buildings, it's about building a culture of innovation. And I was there many times, and I look at the Steve Jobs house, and then I just then discovered that Palo Alto, which Steve Jobs lived, is the home also of Thomas Alva Edison. So there's a culture that's created that is a culture of innovation. And I because I came from there, and I thought I want to give back to that nation. If I could pull that in my lifetime, that would be great. And it's more about education-based. Then you build things around it. That's something that I think I'm passionate about, that I want to go continue to do that. Personally, that I would like to leave something as a, well, this is where one of the reasons why I want to go public is that I want to leave something as a fund in perpetuity. In other words, there's enough fund in there to virtually give to anything that people want to give, like education, underprivileged children. I think some of the things that I thought that we need to do a lot more here is actually providing platform for kids with special learning needs in the university, because once they go beyond high school, there is no place for them anymore. There is no sense of pride, and there are many of these kids who are gifted, but they don't fit in within the mainstream, but they were gifted in a certain way. So, I mean, I had my second daughter is an autistic kid, and she could not speak when she was 4, right? She had a dream at year 10 or 11. She said, Dad, I want to go to university. And I said, okay. Without the ability to communicate as well as normal people, you could not do that. Though she was gifted in drawing, hairdressing, makeup, there is no place. But she said, Dad, I want to go to university. And she just kept saying that, university, university, university. There is no university unless I took her to USA. And out of the blue, University of Sydney opened the door for 10 children for these kids. And my daughter was lucky enough to be one of the 10 to get in there, and she graduated from there. And now she's doing her own paintings. She's on the way of making her own art solo exhibition. So I think that sort of thing is something that drives me and that just compels me. It wasn't about the size of the business. Money is just, I don't wake up and thinking that I'm going to be a lot richer than one day. It doesn't drive me. I mean, building passions, what I can give away rather than what I can take, it's probably what drives me most. So I think big in a way, right from day one, but because of that dream that compels me to just keep going. And of course, that dream of 1 million grows to even much larger now. And I'm hoping by 2021 that I can reach that new dream.
Fantastic. Well, the theme of this conference is built around the concept of urban legacy. To wrap us up, in your mind, Soheil, what is urban legacy, and Iwan, as well for you?
I genuinely hope that one day the leaders that we choose to run our countries, our state and local authority understand that urban legacy is about inclusiveness of every single individual that live in that city. And we should not have in this country that 1 in 200 people are homeless, that we have the top 1% of the country population owns over 55% of the total wealth, that the top 8 wealthiest individual in Australia has more than 50% of the total wealth of the country. We have chosen individual leaders to lead us, and unfortunately, in every aspect they have divided us. Is a rich versus poor, it is religion versus other religion, is migrant versus people that they were born here. And this thing long term cannot be the forces to move forward. And I hope the urban legacy should not be just about the building. It should be about the community, that everybody proudly feel that they are part of that.
Iwan? Final word?
I think it's, I would love to leave a legacy in a way to some extent, being an urban developer, to say that creating beautiful building does not compete, but complete the ambition to grow big business. When you build the best, they will come. You know, if you're the only one, the only 200 units in the market rather than the one of the 3,000 units in the market, you're better off doing that there. So it's that drives of just doing something excellent, and really going beyond building a successful building, but building buildings of significance. What I mean by that is successful buildings responded to our need, responded to, well, it's functional, it has the right orientation to the sunlight, 70% has got sunlight, 30% doesn't, or cross-flow ventilation. They are successful building. But building with significant building impacted beyond just the building, the occupants themselves, and I think that's important, but it impacted the whole city in a sense that people become proud of it. It's such a new benchmark, and people are saying, well, if you can do that, I can follow and probably do a lot better than you. I mean, I do believe that people, once you set a benchmark, people will just go over to the next thing, and that's really something that I think was really a joy for the Crown Group. I remember the time when we were doing the competition for Green Square, and we had 3 architects, and one of them was not, well, the council actually asked me not to include the 4th one, because he's been winning 2 jobs of mine, so if you win the 3rd one, it doesn't look good, right? I said, can I just pay the 4th one? He ended up designing it, and he ended up winning it, Koichi Takada, right? And while we were doing the building there, and out of the 4 judges, including me, 2 of them were skeptical about building that said, look, it's too far different to what's around it. And they said, can it just be more conventional? Well, I was in the room and I was listening, and I said, I thought design competition is about groundbreaking approach, it's about setting a new benchmark, new ideas. Well, if that was the case, if that was not the case, then why should we have design competition? And look, I'm saying, can I do this? Can everybody else be the canvas, and I'll be the painting in that canvas? Let everybody else build box building, but let us build the most significant building in that place there. I'm building an Infinity by Crown Group. I mean, if you drive from the airport towards the city, you'll see that building. It's a head-turning building. And we launched that job, and we were achieving 20-30% above the market price in just one day launch. That today, people are commenting about, wow, that was a good building. Well, it's going to be finished next year, and we'll have a conference, and I think we should have the Urbanity in that building there. And we should bring all the people here to go to Sydney. So that's really, I think, building legacy, that brand and creation of great business complete one another rather than compete, where we say, look, okay, let's build the cheapest building because the market doesn't respond to it. I think we should go opposite that. Now, I remember in 2004, Adam, that in the recession of New South Wales, when the mining boom was hitting you guys in Brisbane, you guys were making a fortune here. Perth developer are making a fortune, Melbourne developers are making a fortune, but New South Wales does not have a lot of mining-based production there, and the interest rate goes up, property price goes down, right? And that's the cycle. We were struggling. We were building 240 units in Parramatta. Parramatta on that time was not Parramatta today, when you have all this future fast train, 15 minutes connection to the city, potentially. I was selling 1 unit per month at 20% below the market price. 240 units, that would be 240 months to sell. And we could not even build it, but we just started building. And I thought, on that time, wow. I thought, what do? You can't get out. It's the wrong time. Then a friend of mine was giving me this book, The Blue Ocean Strategy by W. Chan Kim. Blue Ocean Strategy is a book that was one of the best-selling books that talks about how do you create your own product that you can write your own rule, and therefore you make your competitors irrelevant. It talks about Cirque du Soleil, the circus industry that rises up out of the dying circus industry. It talks about our wine, Casula wine, that rises up to massive turnover, exporting the whole world. So I thought, when I thought about it, like the best building in the world were in fact not built on the best side. When we think about the 7-star hotel, the Aman Resort were built around places that are quite ugly. And we were building in the wrong area of Parramatta. It wasn't even called Parramatta. And I thought, let me turn it into the Bali in Parramatta, the urban resort that no one has seen. We finished that job faster than we thought, and we doubled up our profit. So that was, since then on, we never turned back, and we just get better in doing that, leaving an urban legacy that really, challenge the status quo, just build better. Be the first, because you don't remember the second one, We always remember our first kiss, but we don't remember the second kiss, right? And
I think that's a note to leave it on. Iwan, Soheil, thank you so much for joining us here at Urbanity. There's an enormous amount of wisdom, experience, passion, care and compassion for the world around us, and I think it's an incredible example of what an urban legacy actually is. Would you please thank them again?
Thank you for having me.